All right. I am with Mike Patton, the inspector. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. What is that stain anyway? No, I mean, as an inspector, you deal with like a lot of weird stains. How do you know, like, if it's something to be concerned with?
Well, the first place is if it is a, a major event stain, usually water related, it's the first thing everybody goes to is
Right.
did the owner have disclosure on it? The next piece of that is no matter what I say while I'm standing there, unless I'm watching water run into it, I'm going to basically direct you to ask that seller what created the stain, what the history of it is. Please sign here.
Yeah.
One of those conversations. We always recommend that if a owner or selling party is going to answer a question, do it in writing,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's kind of funny what you hear and you don't hear.
It
But
just
yet when
feels
you're,
like every stain we see, like, I immediately think there's like water, especially like in a basement, right? You see
well,
these stains and you're like, it's got to be water coming in.
well, in a basement, you got all kinds of opportunities. I'm going to start with ceiling. Ceiling, a lot of times it's not a plumbing leak, it's a condensation leak coming off of refrigeration lines. In other words, your compressor's at one end of the building and your HVAC unit's at the other end of the building.
Is
If
that
you're
a
real inside,
problem?
it causes water stains because if you'll think of where you've got an exposed line at without insulation on it, it drips right there. So you'll find these little funny drip marks that nobody can figure out. And then you figure out where the line set has been run through for refrigeration lines. And it's like,
Is it an inspection issue that that's dripping?
yeah, it's not a good thing just because you don't know when it's leaking. And like during the winter months, you're going to say, got no idea, it's dry as a bone. We're going to pull a moisture meter up, slap it on it. We use a couple of different types of moisture meters for the conversation. The one in this application would be a contact only, no pins. The ones that are the most positive have pins in them. They leave snake bite marks wherever you use them at. So
Oh,
on any finished materials, you don't want to be putting pinholes all over the place. So we
right.
use just contact units for those. But to your question is that's a seasonal leak.
Okay.
Seasonally is when it condensates. You'll probably want to get it corrected, but if it doesn't make sense, you're going to kills it again and you're going to hope for the best. But then that can cause other problems called that moldboard. So yeah,
Hmm.
you want to get it fixed. The other one is sometimes like this time of year, right now with our wonderful temperatures
Hot.
hitting 90 something plus, if you got any exterior air coming into the building anywhere, you're going to have condensation just dripping off of your registers. That's a situation that you can't do anything about. But now, like for example, uh, had a owner walk in as we are trying to figure out stains on a ceiling one day, and it
Hmm.
was a weird pattern. And he finally says, "You remember the Mentos experiments where you put a Mento into a drink and it blows up and it goes everywhere? My kids did that with Red Pop, which he said paint didn't exactly cover the best. So you have those abnormal ones that you really do need some insight as to how it got there. That's
Right.
on your ceilings. You can always have leaks associated with plumbing.
But I
If
think
it's a,
that's like, let's back up. Like, if there's, I mean, for sellers and for real estate listing
yeah,
agents out there, if that's, if we're seeing stains and it's something like that, right? It's better just to like get it corrected rather
yeah,
than waiting for the inspector and the buyer to ask what it is. Because we're
yeah,
automatically going to assume it's a water stain.
that is correct. I would
But I
definitely tell
assume
you at
you were
all
like,
times.
there's no plumbing. Like, where is this coming from? Like, how would it get here?
And that's one of those funny stories that a homeowner is going to say, yeah, this happened, ha ha ha, let's get it past it. But
Right.
yet you can create a nightmare out of a water stain that's misunderstood. That can become a major issue
Well,
because
what are the like what are some tips? Like I imagine, right? If it's like an active water stain and it's raining, it's easy to see that, because it's
not really.
no, okay.
You got all kinds of different situations. Let's take it from the basement. First of all, that's going to typically be plumbing leaks coming from the ceiling as a typical
Mm-hmm.
statement.
Mm-hmm.
Outside walls is typically water intrusion. That can
Mm-hmm.
even come just from window wells that aren't draining properly because they got a bunch of goop down in the bottom and they're not draining. Now, if you go back to the roof conversation, the deal there is you've got insulation stacked up in the attic like this, right? So
Right.
that water leak, it may take a month, 2 months before it rips
Oh,
through or saturates the insulation enough if it's a leak. Now, if you're missing components on the roof, you've lost shingles, you've got a vent stack, the flashing's completely gone, and there's water, bulk water running in, you expect to see that with a storm. Again, water has a tendency to run across a sheet of drywall
Mm-hmm.
and newer homes, if you will, and it'll hit the tape seams. Then it runs along the tape seams, and you can pick that discoloration up very quickly in the tape seams. But it
Right.
can sit there and drip on a piece of drywall for months and not be
And
detected.
not, but let's say you are looking at a house and you do see a spot. Are there like a couple of things to like check first?
Well, there's several things that you can run through first. Is one, can you relate to where it's at? Does it look like it's active? There's all kinds of questions that go on in your mind just like that.
Is it wet? Is it wet?
Is it wet? It's obvious. If water's pouring out of it, we've got an answer. If there's no
Mostly
water
I
pouring
see
out
like
of it,
cobwebs in it, and I'm like, I'm thinking like this cannot be wet. There's cobwebs here, like that have looked
I won't
dusty.
go there either. We've seen all kinds of weird things. But yet the first thing that most people want to do is run up and touch it, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Don't lick your
hands are clean.
fingers.
Make sure your hands are clean when you do that. Back of your hand works very good compared to the fingertips if you're going to touch
Okay.
it. If it's wet, it really makes no difference. But you start feeling around on it. Do you have a brand new roof on the house? Is this old history? Was this in the disclosure? The most common one is your plumbing stacks going through the roof. Is
Yeah.
your flashing ring around those pipes. Those deteriorate about 7 years in. Nobody
Oh.
thinks to go up there and put a ring on them
Wow.
or to seal them. So about 7 years in, if you start seeing a water leak from somewhere, I've got money, I'm going to put it on the vent stacks,
Okay.
the plumbing vent stack.
That seems so soon.
7 years is about what it takes for UV rays to break down the cheap ones. And that's what
Okay.
90% of the roofers are putting on. Now, we'll give you a trade secret away that all the roofers are going to throw me under the bus for even bringing it up is Odie makes rain collars. They slide right over top of the vent pipe, PVC, cast, and they fit down snugly around that and go down over top of the original
Okay.
flashing. For $4, yeah, let's go up. Today's inflation, $8 gets you an Odie collar. If you're comfortable being on a roof or you have somebody willing to get up there, you can slide one over and solve that leak just like this.
Wow.
That's your most common roof leak.
Okay.
Is the flashing around those pipes.
Okay.
But as far as detecting what they are, we can use thermals on them. We can also use moisture meters. We use those two in conjunction with each other. Because if we see it with a thermal, we're going to test it with another device to confirm what we've seen.
When you're doing an inspection, are those devices part of the inspection, or is that like an add-on?
No, what we use, they're tools in the bag. There's different companies that will advertise thermal imaging,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a big misconception on what that means. Thermal imaging to us is a tool in the bag. It's an assistance to prove out or to locate and find. When you talk about thermal imaging and you're going to scan a house, that's a whole different conversation. You're going to have a much higher grade of equipment to successfully do that. Plus, keep this in mind. If somebody's going to do a thermal of the entire house, you're looking for what they call the delta temperature at 30 degrees difference from the outside temperature and your inside temperature.
Okay.
Quite frequently, that's not obtained when people are saying that they're doing a thermal scan.
Oh.
So it's very, I'm not going to say misleading, but it's very misunderstood.
Yeah, that seems like that's like a whole different video, kind of in the weeds.
That's a whole different video, but yet when we use a thermal and we say we've got a water leak, we've got another device that backs up that statement.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because keep in mind, that's reading nothing but surface temperature and whatever impacts.
Yeah. So what I hear from you is, okay, you see a stain, try to see if it's still wet, use the back of your hand.
Tissue works great too.
And try to see if you can locate where it could possibly be coming from to see what it is. And then you like have if there's an inspector like you, use the devices to detect the moisture or whatever it is that gets detected. Do you have another funny story for us, like the Mentos one?
Well, occasionally, I can't say which specifically one, but yet we've had water stains. Seems to be the basement areas or near sunrooms where we can't figure out a peculiar water stain.
Okay.
And you'll usually find out there's a small dog in the house that loves that one spot to urinate. So now you're trying to
That's
figure this
not
one
good.
out. Well, it opens up another can of worms. Now everybody's
Right.
concerned with where else does he like to do that at? And what's my animal going to do when they come in?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Mike, tell us where you service. Ohio, Kentucky.
Indiana. So
Okay.
we've got the entire tri-state area. We run basically from Lebanon, Ohio to Williamstown, Kentucky. Actually do some other work in Georgetown area, and then
Okay.
Batavia out to the east. We go a little bit farther out, and then the immediate area of Indiana being the Lawrenceburg area, Greensburg area, right in that vicinity. So, but yet to get a hold of us, it's AA Home Inspection, 859-448-0213 is our direct line. Got a couple others, but we'll leave that alone. And then our website is aahomeinspection.com.
Perfect. Always a fountain of information. I appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Take care, Jennifer.